Yes, indeed. Welcome into one of the best Total Hockey Nows of the year. It's the Trade Deadline Special for 2025. I am at Pucking Thoughts, Adam Bernard. Man over there is at Fuzzy Chris 91, Christopher Merez. You know, the playoffs, the Stanley Cup, that's all good stuff. Free agency, we love it. But the trade deadline, top 3 day of the year in the NHL calendar.
Easily, probably one of the best days in sports for those of us who are not getting traded.
Yes.
I am definitely not getting traded tomorrow, so I can just sit back and watch other families get uprooted in the hopes of winning a Stanley Cup. So not stressful for me, but I understand how maybe probably a lot of players want this day to be want tomorrow to be gone, like after 3:00 Eastern, so they can at least sleep better.
And for we'll be doing a complete trade deadline recap of the week so far and what we expect to happen tomorrow. We'll also preview the 9-game Thursday slate. Let's face it, the trade deadline is going to have an impact on a couple of these teams playing tonight. So guys uncertain in the locker room, who's going to be here tomorrow, who's not. So, that certainly factors in when you're trying to make picks and best bets for tonight. We'll get to that later. I mean, we shouldn't waste any more time here. I mean, it's NHL trade deadline tomorrow, at 3:00 Eastern time. We're going to be covering it for you like a blanket, previewing it today. But tomorrow at Slapshot Podcast, Chris, before we get busy here, why don't you tell us what you got lined up for tomorrow's show?
We have a day tomorrow. I am going to get a good night's sleep tonight, and tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. I know it's early for you on the West Coast, but to be fair, you guys get to go to bed early, right? Because you don't have to stay up late to watch any of the 10 p.m. games like I do. So you're going to go to bed early, then you're going to get up, you're going to grab a cup of coffee, if that's what you like, tea, whatever you want, your beverage of choice, and then we are going to lock in for 7 hours of sports. It's locked and loaded. We got a ton of guests, right? Yourself as well, and right, Animal gets the privilege of joining us, and I get the privilege of having him. We get to talk about the trades that have happened. We get to talk about the potential trades that may happen. We get to chat with a whole bunch of other guests. I'm expecting a minimum of like 5 Puck Doku wins in a row. That's my most important thing. I need you to help me there. Special surprise as well for you, right? I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to be fun. And yeah, just a whole day of, we can talk about NHL DFS. We're going to do some of that. Best bets as well, because I mean, we gotta make money on Fridays, right? So
yeah, of course.
We're gonna do a whole bunch of that. If you have fantasy hockey you want to talk about, how do these trades affect your lineup, waiver wire, whatever you guys want to talk about, you can come hang out for 10 minutes. You can hang out for the whole day. You can skip work if you want me to sign a waiver. I'll do it for you. I don't know how much like that I hold in power, but it's a full day of activity. 10 a.m. Eastern, just lock in now.
And we have seen some activity this week, and sometimes that ends up robbing the trade deadline of, its value and like the excitement. I don't necessarily think that's the case here. We're going to go back. There's been, we know the JT Miller trade happened a couple of months ago. We know the Sharks, made the Cody Ceci trade and the Mikhail Granlund trade. We're not going to go back that far. We're just going to go back to March 1st here. We'll keep it within the month here, leading up to the week, looking at the moves that have already been made. And hopefully that'll help paint a picture here for what we think is going to happen here in the next 24 hours. So we start with March 1st. We go back all the way back to Saturday. The Rangers acquire Calvin DeHaan, Juuso Parssinen, and conditional 2nd and 4th round picks. The Avalanche acquire Ryan Lindgren, Jimmy Vesey, and Hank Kempf. So the Rangers making it known that while they're not selling like as a rebuilding team, they very much have an eye on next year. If they get into the playoffs and they get that last Eastern Conference wildcard spot, great. If not, oh well. We'll get to the Riley Smith trade that happened earlier today later on. So Rangers clearly in sell mode, Colorado clearly in buy mode.
I guess the New York Rangers are like neither buyers nor sellers, and I don't think many people thought they would be in the position that they are today. They went out, they got JT Miller. Have they been a lot better? But good for them for getting some picks here. Colorado goes out and gets a little bit of depth here. Jimmy Vesey will help them. We'll see what Ryan Lindgren brings here. There's no secret. He wasn't really great with the Rangers, kind of getting a little bit overmatched. Maybe some sheltered minutes with Colorado will be good. Colorado needs bodies to be healthy so that they can take a little bit away from McKinnon and Natushkin and the rest of the gang, Makar, because those guys are still seeing a ton of ice time. So I don't hate the trade for Colorado. A conditional second and fourth is like, it is what it is.
And again, we talk, one of the issues we talk about with the Avalanche here is that, lack of depth. Those are guys that are going to help with their depth there. And listen, Ryan Lindgren kind of, not to say war is welcome out in New York, but at least with a decent chunk of the fan base, they were ready to move on from him. He certainly played his heart out for them while he was here, but maybe he gets his game revamped a little bit in Colorado. That next trade you see there on the March 1st list, Predators acquire, the Wild acquire Gustav Nyquist. The Predators get a 2026 second round pick for him. So Minnesota, trying to fill a little bit of the void left behind by Kaprizov, the injury. That's not a really easy thing to fill. But when Kaprizov does come back, you have some depth. I like that move for Minnesota. I didn't see them doing anything too flashy here at the deadline. Still some time left, but that feels like a very Minnesota Wildish kind of move.
Very Minnesota Wild to acquire Gustav Nyquist before the deadline. He goes back to a team he's already played for. Second round pick. Nashville collects an asset for a player they were not going to keep. And for Minnesota, I guess it's a question of how quickly can Kirill Kaprizov get back, and do they still have a shot at making the playoffs? I don't think the door is closing as quickly as people think it is. That Western Conference still has some spots. It might not be a divisional spot for Minnesota, but I think they still have a chance here. But they need their best player to come back. It's very important.
I know it's been a little bit of a struggle lately, but if you think the Minnesota Wild are missing the playoffs, I don't know about that. Maybe they fall out of that top three in the Central. Winnipeg and Dallas are pretty much firmly entrenched as two of those, and Minnesota and Colorado will battle out for that third spot. But we talked about this last week on Total Hockey Now. That last wild card spot in the West, is it Vancouver, Calgary, is it St. Louis, it's Utah? It's wide open. So because of that, I think even if Minnesota continues to slip a little bit, I don't think they're necessarily in danger of falling out of the playoffs, but they might have to go and deal with, a Vegas or a Winnipeg in the first round because of falling down into the wild card picture. It also depends on if Colorado can pass them, which they're very close in the standings, and can't see why that won't happen. So see if Minnesota does anything else here, or if Nyquist is it. Move on to March 2nd, and that was the big one so far of the week here. Seth Jones, a contract that we didn't know if it was going to be movable or not. He in a 2026 fourth round pick heading to Chicago. They get Spencer Knight, a conditional 2026 first round pick, and they retain 26% of Jones' salary. Now, again, last week, Total Hockey Now, we were talking about Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini. Who would you rather be for the next 10 years? He said the Sharks had a clear plan, including an in net. There was no clear plan in net for the Blackhawks. Well, they go out and change that. Kyle Davidson goes out and gets their goalie of the future. Now, there's no doubt about Spencer Knight's going to get every opportunity there. So I think that's a good move for both sides.
I believe that this is a good move for Chicago. First of all, Chicago got a haul for a player who did not want to be there. It was no secret that Seth Jones didn't want to be in Chicago, and he now gets to go to the white sandy beaches of Sunrise, and he's probably really happy. And Spencer Knight is probably happy as well. It must be tough leaving, sunny Florida, no state tax, and now he's got to go to Chicago on a rebuilding team. But he gets to be a starter, and there is no question he is going to be it. Peter Mrazek is basically no longer, there's no three-headed monster in Chicago. Peter Mrazek is just he's just watching. I think maybe he has another home by this time tomorrow. I do think it was quite something, though, for Florida to let Brandon Montour walk instead of giving him basically the same money as Seth Jones. And then not even a year later, acquire Jones and have to pay a top goalie prospect and a first round pick. That to me is the head scratcher here, because you could have avoided this. And Florida, look, Sergei Bobrovsky is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. And we'll touch on Vitek Vanacek later, but that's not the future. Same thing with Kabakov. Those are not future players. So does this mean that Florida is all in on trying to re-sign Bobrovsky? I guess. We're going to have to see how much that costs and what the term is. But Florida has they have no backup here. It's Bobrovsky, and that's pretty much it. So he needs to stay healthy. One, he needs to continue to play at the level that he does. Because if none of that happens, then this trade looks miserable.
Now, I know Spencer's going to a rebounding team, but they're like, I'd rather go to a rebuilding Blackhawks than like, I don't know. There are other, bottom feeder teams that, at least it's Chicago. It's the Blackhawks. They're going to, like I said, they're going to give this guy every chance to take the crease. It's in his hands now. And they understand that, and there's going to be allowances for the team that's in front of him in terms of his numbers and stats. But he doesn't have Bobrovsky in front of him. Florida doesn't have to. I mean, granted that they're worried about winning. They're not worried so much about, developing Spencer Knight, but that does kind of hang over your back a little bit there. And let's face it, Bobrovsky, I think he would probably resign on a somewhat friendly deal just to, because if Florida's obviously going to be competitive this year, probably going to be a cup contender next year. But then after that, we'll see. But in terms of bringing Seth Jones back and letting Montour walk, I think they thought that they had a good enough blue line, that they had the depth and the players that, okay, we can try and live without Montour. And then they realized, okay, can we live without a guy like Montour on the right side on the second pairing? Sure. Is that going to allow us to go deep in the playoffs? I don't know. So they go and they fill that void there. So big trade on March 2nd. Not much else happens that day. We skipped for March 4th. Nothing happened on the 3rd on Monday. And we had a 3-way trade here between the Oilers, Devils, and Bruins. Oilers trying to address their depth down the middle. The Devils, just getting a little bit of for retaining 50% of salary there. So, Edmonton goes out and gets smacked that night. That was not necessarily the way they wanted to react, but at least they're trying to address their depth issues that were left behind by Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg.
Yeah, imagine if you had a player like, Broberg and Holloway on your team, how you wouldn't have to go out and acquire a injured Trent Frederick and have to pay assets. Like this Oilers team is not good. I said this at the beginning of the year. I stand firm on that. This team has holes in their lineup, and you can see the holes. Stuart Skinner is a mess defensively. This team is not good. I mean, they don't have a second line. It's not Podkolzin and Arvidsson. Those guys have not. I mean, there's only so much those guys could have done anyways. So
yeah, they were hamstrung.
Right. Yeah. They're doing the best they can in the situation that they have. If Evander Kane is nowhere near returning, and I don't know what shape he would be in, even if he did. So I guess the Oilers are going to do something else, because if this is the squad going into the playoffs, we can probably book the golf course, for the beginning of May, and you'll be fine.
So, I mean, you look at that Pacific Division right now, and we all know how the playoffs are structured. You got to get through your division first. I went in a first-round series against Vegas. I take Vegas. I know the Kings haven't looked great lately. They're on a 3-game losing streak, but we'll talk more about that later with their matchup. But I think in a first round, the way Edmonton's currently constructed, the Kings would beat them too. Edmonton would have to get very lucky to get that, somehow win the division, and then try and get that bottom feeder, whoever, Calgary or whoever gets into that 8 seed to advance. There's very few teams that I would pick them against the way they're playing right now. So definitely Edmonton needs, like you said, help. If they can find any way to get some help on the blue line, I don't know how, but that's going to be one of their targets. And we'll talk about some of those teams later, who's buying, who's selling, all that stuff. We go to March 5th, and it was a busy one. We got the Panthers acquiring Vitek Vanacek. Sharks acquire Patrick Giles there. Again, Florida didn't have a legitimate backup after Bobrovsky. I know they had Chris Dreiger. They thought he could do it. They went out and got Vanacek. And Vanacek as a backup is very okay. They don't want to be in a playoff series where they have to go to him as the guy. But to give Bobrovsky some extended breaks down the stretch, maybe give him a night off here and there, he's okay. He was playing all right in front of a bad Sharks team. So putting him in front of Florida is only going to help, or putting him behind Florida.
Yeah, good. The Sharks took an asset they weren't going to keep and flipped them for something that who knows how that works out.
And listen,
everybody wins. No salary retained either because they couldn't. So Florida was like, hey, we'll take it on. That's probably helped them why they didn't have to really pay much. They're like, we'll accept the whole contract for the end of the season. Just I guess a solid hockey trade for everybody here.
And listen, I know Patrick Giles is an undrafted guy. He got a 9-game tryout, didn't cut it this year, went back to Charlotte in the AHL. But when you're a team like the Sharks, like you get what you can get for these guys, and maybe a change of scenery. Maybe there's something a coach notices in his game. They're like, oh, maybe we can fix this. It's a guy that was walking next year with Vanacek that you weren't going to bring back. And, and they haven't, I don't want to get too much into what they're going to do with Askarov here, because the Barracuda are a very good AHL team with a chance of making a run there. So I almost think if you're the Sharks, like, yeah, the easy thing to be like, all right, you bring up Askarov and Georgiev and Askarov are your guys the rest of the way. I might leave Askarov. Maybe you give him a couple of tastes of the NHL the rest of the way here and there, but I'd rather him have a chance at potential success with the Barracuda in the AHL than, coming up here and, playing out the string against, what's going to be probably a depleted Shark team. They still have a couple more pieces to move, and they moved another one today. We'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, no, that's that. I mean, they don't have to. You can, like you said, like, what do you want more for the player? Do you want that player to experience some success, even if it's in the AHL? Or, like, is it worth it to bring Askarov up now to just get shelled every night? Like, I think, and again, when we talked about this last time, like, the San Jose Sharks are bad, but it seems like they're having fun. They seem like they're just vibing. So I don't know.
Tyler Toffoli just lost a bet to Celebrini and Will Smith, where if all three scored in the game, Toffoli had to sleep in a cot in their room, and hence they got all three. And Tyler Toffoli probably did not get a good night's sleep last night.
The vibes, like I said, the vibes in San Jose are up there. Bad team, but the kids are having fun. I also like how his wife, Kat Toffoli, right, shared like the screenshot of it. I can only imagine her face, like, as her husband's like, "Yeah, I'm having a sleepover with like an 18 and a 19-year-old. By the way, I'm not, honey, I'm not coming home. I'm sleeping at the hotel with the boys." I can only imagine her reaction to that, being like, "What is my husband doing?" Then getting that picture.
You guys do what you do on the road. I'll see you when you get home, honey.
That's
how you reply to that text. Got a couple guys checking in. Hi, Marek, one of the regulars here. Cam McDavid dragged them into the playoffs. Sure, you can drag them into the playoffs. I'm not saying Edmonton's going to miss the playoffs. I just don't think, neither does Chris for that matter, thinks they're going to go very far. I don't think there's going to be an attempt to repeat as Western Conference champ, attempt to go one step further this year. I don't know if they're going to get that far. State of Survival also checking in. I think Dallas has it this year. I was going to talk about Dallas later in their game against Calgary tonight, but if you told me to pick a team out of the West right now, it's 1,000% Dallas. I am going to be on the Stars bandwagon out of the West the rest of the way. Back to
Dallas. Dallas Stars are pretty good here, even though there's no Miro Heiskanen, which I think hurts. Tyler Seguin's not healthy. This team, once all the pieces are in place, though, man, they're cooking. They're cooking with gas.
And yeah, they've made their moves already. They brought in CC. They brought in Mikhail Granlund. But there's not to say that they're not done yet. They can potentially, we'll see what happens here in the, next 24 hours. Also, we talked about the Seth Jones being one of the bigger trades. Here's the other big trade that's happened so far. Tampa Bay gets Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, a 2026 fifth-round pick. The Kraken acquire Michael Eyssimont, and a 2025 second, and 2026 and 2027 first round picks. So they get a second and two firsts there. For the Tampa Bay side, depth was a little bit of an issue at forward. They basically just added a third one. That's you want to talk about, they just give out first round picks and stuff like that. Tampa recognizes that their window is closing. They've only got maybe another year or two here. I know Vasilevsky's playing out of his mind right now, but this is a move you make if you're trying to go this year. And I it's a lot to pay. I'm okay with it though, because you just basically added a third line.
All these teams that don't have any picks, first of all, I feel bad for their scouting department, because these guys are never at opening day of like the draft, because like, what are you preparing for, right? Why?
Yeah.
What? But the Vegas Golden Knights, I'll throw the Florida Panthers in there as well, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. These are teams that win Stanley Cups and have no picks. So I get that how important building the future is and having picks and all that, but for teams that need to win and win now, Julian Breezeball said it. He'd much rather go get a player that can help him win now. They are in the business of winning and winning now. Those picks won't help them win, but they will help them acquire players who will help them win. So is it a lot to pay? Probably. We saw them give out, a boatload of picks for Tanner Jeannot, and that didn't work out. But I feel like Tampa Bay is just like, if they have a first round pick, they don't want it. They're just like, hey, take this, take this, take another one, and let us bring it. First of all, Bjorkstrand comes in, great third line player. Yanni Gourde comes back to Florida. I'm sure he's happy. Gourde could play solid third line minutes. Bjorkstrand as well. You could kind of shelter those guys a little bit. Like this is fantastic. It's fantastic work from Tampa. Tampa Bay just like whipped it out, slapped it on the table, and said they will not let Florida and the Toronto Maple Leafs take off. Like this, they want to win the Atlantic. It's super important to win the division, so you don't have to play the other one. And Julian Brisebois did exactly that.
We talk about center depth being key to deep playoff runs all the time. Obviously, Braden Point, Anthony Cirelli is a good place to start. He's the top two. Luke Glendening wins a ton of faceoffs, a great fourth line center. Yanni Gourde is exactly what you're looking for as a third line center there. I mean, if you want to, like, if you were going to have a prototypical third line center for a championship team, he is that guy. And now they've added that. So, you know who the Tampa Bay Lightning are with their draft picks? I'm going to shout out an old buddy of mine. He's a co-host of the Morning Men on Mad Dog Radio, Mike Babchick. We are in a dynasty football league together, and he hates the rookie draft every year. He doesn't want to be bothered. So he's one of those guys where if you make him a fairly reasonable offer for one of his rookie draft picks, he's going to click yes. It's not a collusion thing. It's not anything like that. It's just everybody knows he doesn't want to draft. So if you give him something halfway decent, he's going to accept yes. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning with their first round pick. You offer me something decent, I'm going to give it to you. You know what? Like you said, them in Vegas, they got that. Florida's kind of in that mode too, where, hey, we're going for it, and it doesn't matter what it costs. Our window is now. We've done it before, and we want to do it again. So nothing wrong with that. Sharks acquire Vincent Desharnais on the blue line, and the Penguins, I can't believe we're already out to 2028 picks, but here we are, 2028 fifth-round pick there. Who the hell? If you're the Sharks, I mean, if your rebuild plan is going well, that 2028 fifth-round pick better be 25 or later if things are going right. That's how far away that is. Not really much to talk about there. But the Predators acquire Michael Bunting in a 2026 fourth-round pick. Penguins get Tommy Novak and Luke Shen, who they're potentially going to flip. I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit there, because there's a lot of things with the Penguins there, so we'll save them for a little bit. Let's get into the trades that have happened today. Started off early this morning. The Devils get Brian Dumoulin. Probably, maybe they make that move anyway, but the second Dougie Hamilton goes down, now you need another guy on the blue line. Not that Dumoulin's going to replace what Hamilton does. That's going to be Luke Hughes' job. But you need depth. And they also, the Ducks get Herman Traff in a 2025 conditional second-round pick, and they retain 50% of Dumoulin's salary. I know Anaheim's been playing better lately. They've been one of the hotter teams out of the West over the last month, but they understand that they are not one of those teams that are trying to get that last playoff spot. If they keep winning as is, sure, but they're not, they've got too many guys to sell. We'll get to them in a little bit.
Yeah, they're like, look, let's not get it twisted here. The Anaheim Ducks are horrendous. John Gibson left yesterday's game, so like he just keeps. Maybe he doesn't want to leave Anaheim. Maybe he does. I don't know. Homie can't stay healthy. The New Jersey Devils are in a real bind here because Dougie Hamilton is week to week. Jack Hughes is done for the year. That shoulder did not hold up. It's kind of unfortunate that Jack Eichel, takes down Jack Hughes. And I don't think it was anything malicious or anything. It's just two American guys get tangled up. One shoulder goes in. Jack Hughes has really struggled to stay healthy here. I'm not saying he's injury prone. I'm not saying he can't stay healthy, but I mean, homie's had some bad luck. He needs to, I don't know, rub a rabbit's foot or something, because it's just not, he's just really, really unlucky. So there's a massive hole for the Devils. I don't know if this changes their plans or how seriously they think they can get, like, they're going to get into the playoffs, but how seriously do you think they believe that they can get to the Stanley Cup final without Jack Hughes? Like, that is asking for something. And I just don't know if they have it.
The Devils were a team that were going to want another center anyway, because obviously you got Hischier, you got Hughes. Howla and Lazar, you can live with that, but you'd rather have one of those guys and then another center. So they were going to go out and get a center anyway. Now the question is, are you still going to go get that center, but the target being more of like a middle six center? Or are you going to try and go and get, maybe like a Ryan O'Reilly type to try and help that? Because, and I was talking about this with Mr. Jared Moore on Rip and Riff earlier in the week, because he covers the Devils for allaboutthejersey.com, big Devils fan. And he said, they shouldn't be looking at Reynolds for this year. They need to be looking at moves that can help them for this year and beyond. So they should be looking for guys with term. And I agree with that, because, some people be like, oh, what's the point of the Devils trying to make the playoffs now? They're a little bit weaker down the middle. They might get bounced in the first round. A team like that needs to get to the playoffs a couple of times to get that experience. So I think the Devils still need to operate as a team that's like, okay, we're going for it. But I think Tom Fitzgerald understands now, no Jack Hughes. I don't know if I'm going to put the pedal to the metal in terms of making acquisitions to make a run this year. I think maybe that pressure is off a little bit, but I still think he's buying, but he's probably a little bit more selective as a buyer now.
I have the solution for the Devils. It's Christian Dvorak. Now, I might be heavily biased because I just want Dvorak anywhere else on the planet.
That's true.
But if the Devils give the Chunky his first round pick for Christian Dvorak, I'll let him go. You know what I mean? You can have him, and we'll retain 90% of his salary for the rest of this year if you want. Like, it's fine. I'll approve it. I'll pre-approve it.
What are you smoking up there? Why don't you send some my way?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I may be biased. Like, I may be 100% biased here, just a little bit. But you know what I mean? Maybe just we'll take him, and we'll just keep paying him, but he'll be there.
Now, before we move on from the Devils, we'll talk about them a little bit later too. Jack Hughes is not in the injury-prone conversation yet, but let me tell you, when you're trying to fill content in the summer for hockey, that is absolutely going to be on a talking point at your favorite local hockey podcast, because he's starting to border on that now. Again, it was a freak thing, tangled up with a guy like Jack Eichel. It's a shoulder. You don't want to see that. I mean, like I was talking with Jared, back in Rip and Riff, like there are certain ways you walk off the ice and you're like, oh, that's a poop walk. He's going to be back in 5 minutes. That was not a poop walk.
No, he was holding his shoulder immediately. You could see it dropping. You're like, oh man, what broke?
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens with the Devils in the offseason here and what they do tomorrow. He says, don't forget a bag of pucks for Dvorak. Thank you, Marek, for checking in. Got to have that bag of pucks, because let's face it, pucks go out of the rink all the time there and shoot around and in practice. You can't have too many pucks. So let's see. We got two more moves to get to before we start to look ahead to tomorrow here. Panthers and Sharks, Vitek Vanacek, and wasn't enough there with the Patrick Giles move. They bring in Nico Sturm for a 2026 fourth-round pick. I think with Mike Greer, a lot of these picks a few years from now, he's trying to build up the war chest of picks he's going to use to spend to upgrade at the deadline when the Sharks are ready. So Mike Greer, always thinking a couple of steps ahead here. I have no problems with what he's doing. I am a huge Mike Greer fan for the Sharks. But looking at the Panthers here, again, this is a move that's going to help their bottom six out, increases their depth. A couple of guys they lose off of the Stanley Cup team last year. Now they're trying to replace it. Nico Sturm has had a good year for the Sharks in that middle to bottom six role. And I again, another strong move for Florida.
Yeah, perfect. Bottom six guy, didn't really cost you much. Adds depth to a team that's expected to make a long run. Just solid work by Zito here.
I mean, they had Stenlund last year. Maybe this is like trying a way to fill that void, because you need guys like Stenlund too to win the Stanley Cup. You need to put out shutdown lines when Edmonton's throwing McDavid out every other shift, because that's all they have. And then the latest trade that happened today, a little while before we took air today, Riley Smith going back to Las Vegas there. The Rangers acquired Brendan Brisson and a 2025 third-round pick. That's actually the Sharks pick that they're getting there. That does make a difference, Sharks pick versus Vegas pick in this year's draft, because that's going to be in a top 5 third-round pick there. New York also retains 50% of Riley Smith's salary. So, the Rangers, again, clearly selling with an eye on maybe, going again next year. We'll talk about them in a second. Chris Kreider's a name I heard around, but Vegas, we talked about them before. Team that's going for it, team that wants it. This is a perfect middle edition with a guy they know what they're getting. He's going to be welcome back in that locker room. I recognize a lot of people aren't still there from his first tenure, but he's going to plug in nicely for Vegas. I think that's a good trade for both sides.
Absolutely. An original misfit. So welcome back. Like you said, he's going to fit right in, keep doing what he's got to do. Vegas, once again, adding another piece to the puzzle. Again, a team that does not care about draft picks. I'm excited to see how they circumvent the cap this year. That's I feel like they haven't done it yet. And that's like you can count on 3 things in life: death, taxes, and the Las Vegas Golden Knights doing something at the deadline that nobody saw coming. Last year was Noah Hannafin. I mean, they did Thomas Hurdle as well before. They've done Jack Eichel. It's like there's all kinds of ways to get around this salary cap. It's a mirage for them. It's a fugazi. It doesn't exist. So I want to see how they get around it, just because I'm curious now.
And what they're good at too is they tend to bring in these guys that are on the back nines of their career, the Brandon Sodds, the Tanner Pearsons of the world, and they find a way to get every drop of that, orange out of them for a little more juice there. I mean, yes, guys like Pavel Dorofiev are certainly starting to become more of a vital and important player there and increasing their role in production. But you need those other guys too to help fill out the lineup that have been down the road before, know what it takes. Vegas, they're trying to make this. Vegas is what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that they establish themselves as the top of team in the Pacific. Then let the Kings and the Oilers figure it out in the first round. Vegas wants to really separate themselves from the pack.
And they are doing a pretty good job of it. This is their division. No other team with the way that they've been playing right now is in that realm. They're like the Kings are on a losing streak. The Oilers can't defend. So who's really challenging them for that top spot in the Pacific? Nobody. It's theirs. They just got to stay the course, be on point, be locked in, and then just bulldoze the Pacific.
Now, I got a graphic up on the screen here, the 2025 NHL Trade Deadline buyers, sellers, and question mark. When you take a look at that screen there, before we get to the guys that are the teams that are either standing pat or we don't know what they're doing, any arguments among the buyer category or the seller category here with the teams I've got? In the buyers, I've got Vegas, Toronto, LA, Colorado, Washington, Winnipeg, New Jersey, Columbus, Minnesota, Edmonton, Tampa, Florida, and Dallas, although I think they're probably done. And the seller category, I got the Rangers, Blackhawks. As two of my cats are really going at it back here. I guess they're getting excited about the Panthers, the Bruins, the Sharks, the Predators. I almost had to get up and break it up. Penguins, Islanders, Flyers, Kraken, Ducks, Canucks, and Sabres are sellers. We agree with all that assessment so far?
I would say so. Milo's not as excited about the buyers, but I like that Columbus is in that group though, because some people think that the Columbus Blue Jackets are terrible, and they are on the road, but at home they're good. And there's a spot for them if they can get players to waive their no trade clause to go to Columbus. So, but there's something cooking there for them. There's something cooking. They probably need an upgraded goal. They aren't going to trade Ivan Provorov, so they're exactly holding on there. I still think they need a couple pieces, but if they want to go for it, they got the green light, I assume.
No, when I say they're a buyer, I'm not saying they're going to go out and get Brock Nelson, make a trade for Erik Karlsson, and really put all their chips in. But I think considering the offseason they had, considering the fact that it's March 6th and they are very much in the wild card conversation and have kind of hovered around there all year and then finally played their way into it over the past month. So I know there was a setback with Sean Monahan, but he could still be back in time for the playoffs, perhaps. I think you owe it to the group in the locker room and the fans, especially factoring in everything that's happened around the team this year, to make an effort to get that wild card spot. Now, granted, you're probably going to play the winner of the Atlantic or the winner of you're going to get a Capitals juggernaut team or a Toronto, Florida, Tampa team that you're going to have some trouble with. Now, Columbus, showed that they're going to have success against the Lightning in the playoffs in the past, different team. But I think they are they're not, trying to buy a giant piece of land, but they're definitely going to pick up a couple pieces of furniture, I think they owe it to them.
Look, they have, according to cap wages, $87 million in cap space. So money's not an issue here. It's a question of whether they want to go out and do it. Do they have the assets to want to make it happen? They have $16 million in true cap space. So again, they have money. It's just traditionally the Columbus Blue Jackets don't really spend to the cap. So does a small market team like Columbus want to embark on that? Yes, they could get blown out of the water in the first round, but I think for some of these teams, getting there is still a win. And the buzz it creates and wanting, like, players want to go to teams that have success. And if you continuously make the playoffs, then at least some players can feel, hey, maybe I'm the missing piece that makes this team, get over the hump. So I would be okay with Columbus just doing something, just pure chaos. That'd be okay with me.
I mean, again, the wild card picture in the East is wide open right now. And that's why we go to the question mark category. That's why I've got teams like Calgary, Montreal, Detroit, Ottawa, St. Louis, Utah. Carolina is a whole other animal we're going to get to. I know we haven't talked about the elephant in the room. That's Mikko Rantanen, and that's going to be next. But look at a team like Detroit in a similar spot as Columbus. They missed the playoffs by a regulation victory last year or something like that. Todd McClellan has turned the tide in that locker room. I don't know if they're going to go nuts. They could be in a similar boat with Columbus and trying to hey, let's just get back to the playoffs. It's been a while. I don't know how aggressive they're going to be towards that. I know they were trying to get in on Dylan Cousins, and that kind of fell apart. So maybe they are going to buy a little bit, but that's a team I have no clue. Calgary, same thing. They might get that last wild card spot by default. I think that depends on whether St. Louis trades Braden Shen or not. They found out today that Colton Parayko is going to be out a while, probably done for the year. So again, you got to decide if making a run for that 8th spot in the West is worth it, or if they're going to deal Shen. So that'll tell us if they're buyers or sellers. Ottawa, same boat as Detroit and Columbus. Not really sure what they're going to do there. And Utah, I got the Coyote shirt. It's first trade deadline without one of the biggest sellers of the trade deadline of all time. I mean, you could count on the Phoenix/Arizona Coyotes, setting up that, garage sale in the driveway. They're out there at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning getting ready to put everything out there. You can bank on it every year. No more.
You could always count on the Arizona Coyotes to retain 50% salary for a 3rd round pick. And now we have no real dumping spot. San Jose's already used up all their spots, so we can't dump anything there. I don't know about Chicago, but they have used one for Seth Jones. So maybe they have one left. But we don't have a dumping ground anymore. We don't have a plate. Like a GM, you can just call and be like, hey, man, can you help broker this deal? I'll give you a pick, and you just take it. We also don't have a place where we could go and dump contracts like Shea Weber and Pavel Datsyuk and all those deals that never came through, where you could just stash them on LTIR forever. So, yeah, just pour one out to the poor fans of the Arizona Coyotes. I will say this. St. Louis and Ottawa, not this year. Thanks for trying. Nope. Calgary, it is what it is there. Detroit, I feel like maybe Yzerman goes out to get a piece. I feel like their goaltending is okay. They've played a lot better since Tom McClellan's been behind the bench. Maybe a piece on the back end, maybe another depth piece. I just don't know if they're legit or not. Utah, same thing. I don't know how legit they are. Maybe they add a piece, maybe they don't. I also don't think the Montreal Canadiens are going to be in a true seller's mode. They're 1 point out of it, whether you want to believe that they can or not. The goal was to be competitive this year at this point, and they have achieved that. So they already locked up Jake Evans. So maybe they trade Armia. Maybe I'm hoping Dvorak has a new address, but I don't see them doing much. Would I like them to do something? Yes. I've just, again, smack it on the table and say, hey, we're going to do this. We're giving this team. I know that they don't want to sacrifice the future, but I just keep thinking back to Tampa Bay and all these teams that win the Stanley Cup, and they don't have a ton of picks. Montreal is no longer in this aura where they need to collect picks. We don't need 900 picks. We need some of these picks to become NHL players at the elite level. So, and I mean, Carolina's a mess. Let's be honest. If I'm a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I'm heavy on the Canadian bourbon tonight because it's not good. It's not good. Mikko Rantanen basically told the franchise, I just want to be friends. And Carolina's like, okay, but we want more. And he's like, I don't know yet. So he's not playing tonight either. If you're playing NHL DFS, he's not playing. So it's a mess. I'm sorry, Carolina.
One more point about Utah before we get to the mess in Raleigh right now. Utah, what did they do? They signed Kerfoot. They signed Mata. There was somebody else that they signed to an extension too. So Vejmelka, that was the other guy. So they got Marino back recently, a guy that they counted on to play some minutes in the offseason. Sean Durzee's back. I don't necessarily see them going out and buying, but they could absolutely I could see it's like you said, maybe St. Louis next year. Maybe they trade Shen and they just fall back in the pack and look towards maybe getting a playoff spot next year. I could see Utah, now that they're getting healthy, maybe they can challenge Calgary there, but don't see them really doing too much buying there. So let's get to Mikko Rantanen here, because let's face it, that is going to be the problem here with Carolina, because yes, they are absolutely buyers. They should be buyers, but if they can't extend Rantanen, what do you do? So if you are in that situation, What would you do if you're Carolina? Do you just say, screw it, we're close enough to a championship where we just we play with Rantanen, and then, we deal with the offseason when it happens, and hopefully it's not a big deal because we have a Stanley Cup? Or are we looking at where they're going to flip him again here? And I don't know what to do if I'm Carolina here. I mean, personally, if there's nothing on the table that you're crazy excited about, or if there's a big enough package, just keep him and go for it.
This is a lose-lose for Carolina, no matter what, because if you trade him, you're obviously not getting value for him. You gave up a decent player. I don't think they regret the players that they move. It's just you knew what you were getting into when Mikko Rantanen was coming over without a contract. And I truly believe that Carolina thought they could keep him. And the word around the street was they offered him $100 million plus, right? 9-figure deal. And he's like, hey, I don't know yet. And to be fair, maybe he doesn't know. Carolina, I don't know. But one thing is for certain, he's not playing with Nathan MacKinnon, and that is obvious. And I'm not saying he's a byproduct of him, but I think I could get an assist playing with Nathan MacKinnon. So, because that's how good he makes everybody else's. Like, Marty Necas is having a great time in Carolina. I don't think he's in Colorado. He's not crying about it. Yeah. He's not like boo-hoo. No, he's probably having fun. Again, the problem is, if you trade him, you're not going to get the value back. And then what does that say to like your team? Hey, we tried, and this guy just doesn't want to be here. So I obviously, again, no bias whatsoever, want him to come to Montreal. This is time. You have prospects in the pool. You have picks. Maybe give their general manager a call and say, hey, man, we can fix this. First of all, lots of great things for Mikko Rantanen to love in Montreal. One, it's cold, exactly like Colorado. So that's there. The devil's lettuce is also legalized here if he's into that. I don't know, but I'm just saying it is if it is. There's Finns here as well. Yoel Armia is a Finn, and so is Patrick Laine. So there's a lot of Finnish players that can, talk about it. Montreal's got cap space. Let's face it. There's, Finland is cold. Yes, Finland is cold. It's basically like Finland and Canada are basically the same, just on different sides of the ocean. Yeah. So like, why would you not want to come? Like, take him on a grand tour of the city. Take him to Palma, where all the players like to eat on René Lévesque. Take him to a nice little poutine. Take him to Stogie's for a good cigar if he enjoys that, and just like lock in. The only thing that benefits Carolina here is that if they keep him, well, they're the only ones that can offer him an eight-year deal. And I don't know. I just don't know if it's a question of money anymore for Rantanen. Like, he's also won, so maybe he wants to go somewhere else and win. I don't think he's going to get more money on the market considering how he's been playing of late. Like that might not be it.
Marek checking in, Armia, Dvorak for Mikko Rantanen, and picks to sweeten the deal. Wouldn't that be nice? And not for nothing.
There's the lettuce we were talking about.
Armia and Dvorak actually would be. I mean, they've got enough of that in Carolina, but those are very Rod Brindamore-ish kind of players. State of Survival also saying Rant's going straight to free agency. He's going to go to the highest bidder. He's got no loyalty. That they should start trading for picks now. Use the Caps playbook, move out some players and move in better players. They moved 8 players from over that period. So, and hey, worked out well for them this year. This was a team that we were saying were frauds last year, and now we're kind of just forgotten that they're just cruising through the East. We don't even talk about. If it wasn't for Ovechkin's, pursuit of the goal record, like, they're so good, we're not even talking about them.
Just to point out, the only thing that really changed between the Capitals from being frauds last year and where they are here is they bought Cap Friendly, stripped it, and then took the intelligence from it. And all of a sudden, they are good. They went out, they go get Jacob Chikrin. He looks fantastic. They brought in a washed-up Pierre-Luc Dubois. He looks fantastic. So, I don't know. Maybe Carolina's got to buy one of those, like another one of those sites that just help us with numbers, and then take the geniuses behind it. Some of those numbers.
Another guy they brought in, Matt Roy. Another
They maybe I don't know. They know. I will say this: there's nothing wrong. I have no problem with Mikko Rantanen having no loyalty. Right? As a famous general manager once said, if you want loyalty, get a dog. So I got a dog. If that doesn't explain to you, Mark Bergevin, the man. To me, it's not about loyalty for Rantanen. If he wants to get paid, my guy, get paid. Go out, get your bag. You know what I mean? Do what you got to do. But I also think if he wanted to get paid, he would have taken Carolina's money. And how much, what's the command here? Does he really think he's going to get, I don't know, $14 million, 7 years from somebody else? Probably. Somebody's dumb enough to do it.
This is not to knock the town of Raleigh, but it kind of feels like he was okay. Like, are you okay with going to Carolina? Sure. They're a cup contender. They're one of the better teams in the league. Go. He gets there and he maybe doesn't love North Carolina for whatever reason. That's not a knock on the state or the city. It's just some guys like to live where it's warm. Some guys like to live where it's cold. It's all a matter of preference. Maybe that's why he doesn't see himself there long term. Maybe he got there and was like, this ain't for me. So it's going to be an interesting 24 hours. Let's stay in the Metropolitan Division, though, as State of Survival points out that Lou is going to be shopping at Loblaws. So, that's what he does.
Giant Tiger. Hope he doesn't have the budget for that. What are you talking about, Loblaws? He's not going there. He's going to Giant Tiger. He's not going to Loblaws.
These Canadian grocery store chain jokes just right over my head.
It's okay. It's okay. If you know, Canada. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But he's not going to Loblaws. He's not going to Provigo. No.
So Lou, he's got two pieces here that he's going to, I know Romanov is on an expiring contract, but he's 25. Keep that guy around. He's one half of your top pairing for a long time. Or you move him down depending upon what you do with Dobson. I know though Dobson's name's been thrown around now with the injury. I don't think that happens. Brock Nelson's considered one of the top remaining available guys out there. My question is not if he's going to get moved, but how is Lou going to mess that up?
He's going to keep him. That's how he's going to mess it up. He's going to keep Paul Barry. He's going to keep Brock Nelson. No beards for anybody. And they're just going to be mediocre again next year. And then the year after that and the year after that, they're just going to live in mediocrity forever. I don't know. What is this? This team is horrendous and good at the same time. When I think they're terrible, they all of a sudden become great. Then I'm like, hey, maybe they're good. And then they're like, no, we're not actually. We are terrible. So I think the market for Brock Nelson is there. Somebody's going to overpay for him. Toronto's just going to pay too much to have a third line center. And Kyle Palmieri just has New Jersey Devils written all over his forehead. You should probably send him there, put him on a flight, say, hey man, we'll figure it out. Just go there. But I am excited to see how Lou messes this up. I am.
I thought Nelson to the Devils would have been a great fit had Hughes still been healthy. And now you roll those three guys down the middle. And now all of a sudden Carolina and Washington maybe have to sweat a little bit more. Don't see that happening now with what's gone on with Jack Hughes, because, bringing in Nelson as a rental is going to maybe get you to the second round of the conference finals, and it's not going to be worth that price at that point.
No. He's
from Minnesota. That's a team to look at. If Winnipeg really wants to make a push and bring in a guy like that, I know they've got a good mix there, not too far from Minnesota. Those are two teams I would keep an eye on for Brock Nelson, but he's the top remaining center out there. So Lou should be able to get a pretty decent package for him if he doesn't mess it up, which we all anticipate. Kyle Palmieri kind of feels like a consolation prize for somebody who's pursuing a wing but can't get one. Let's stay in the Metro here. Pittsburgh Penguins. Luke Shen, they just acquired. They're looking to maybe flip him. Ricard Raquel, another guy, fresh off a Four Nations face-off. And then Erik Karlsson. People like, that contract. Hey, Seth Jones's contract just got moved. So anything's possible.
I don't think Pittsburgh's eating enough money to make that Erik Karlsson deal work. Erik Karlsson he's all offense, no defense, and he is who he is. He had a great showing at the Four Nations. Then he came back, played for the Penguins, and we are reminded of what it is. He was not very good. I am interested to see where Ricard Raquel goes, if he goes anywhere. To me, he's by far one of their best players outside of Crosby. So you can definitely maximize the return on him for a team that wants to add a top 6 forward. I don't know where that is yet, but that's the replacement for Carolina if they do ship Rantanen out. Maybe you switch one Finn with another. Ricard Raquel's a Finn. Yeah, there you go. See, one Finn for another. It's about the same, right?
Yeah, I could see him a team like the Kings strikes me as he fits into that kind of style. They can use some help on the wing. Yeah. They're a much tougher team to play against with a Raquel in the lineup. With eyes on a series against Vegas, that's a destination I could see him looking at. Toronto's looking for more help down the middle. Comment that before that Marek had was the Leafs have money to buy. They don't got money to buy, but they have needs, and they'll figure out ways to make it work there. Luke Shen, yeah, I mean, Kyle Dubois said he likes the character. He likes what Shen brings to the team. Maybe he's a part of what the Penguins are doing in the future. No. Everybody wants defensemen at the trade deadline, especially defensemen like Shen that can help, fill out the bottom four of your pairings there. You got to flip them there. I think, listen, Carlson is not going to be movable, but Shen and Raquel have to be traded.
Here's the interesting thing for the LA Kings. They have $3.3 million in cap space money, so they're going to have to get creative. I think they are a bigger player here just because some people don't know what they're going to do with Brandt Clarke. I think it would be a mistake to move him, but that's just me. But if they decide to go down that route and want to make that mistake, somebody else will take it. And I think dangling a prospect and a pick, especially a prospect like Clarke, could probably land them a fish that they want. I don't know if it's enough for like a Mikko Rantanen, but I do think it would be enough for a Rickard Rakell. Is it too much? Who knows? But that would solidify a lot of things for the LA Kings.
I mean, if it's me, I'm not moving Brandt Clarke, knowing that Drew Doughty is not a spring chicken at this point. Neither is Joel Edmondson. That's your second pairing right there in LA. So I understand, but I wouldn't want to move. I wouldn't want to cut. You don't want to cut your nose to spite your face, right? I wouldn't make that subtraction for my blue line, even though you could use some help up with your forward group. Forward group's still pretty solid. So depending on what they got to do to get it, we'll see. Going across the Keystone State, we go to Philadelphia. Rasmus Ristolainen. Scott Lawton seems like he's been in trade deadline rumors now for the couple of years. It seems like Philly not really doing anything this year. Again, Ristolainen, consolation prize, but Scott Lawton, he's a guy that I think if Philly could get a decent return for him, especially considering how much attention he's got.
He's commanding a ton of attention, and I think it's fair. I think he's a great second, third line center kind of guy. All these teams are looking for those type of players. So I expect the Philadelphia Flyers to be able to maximize their value with Scott Lawton here. I'm talking a pick. I'm talking a prospect. And I don't know if they can get much more after that, but that to me feels like the bar. And if not, you keep them. You just keep them. You don't have to really force your hand here.
Now, again, comes down to cap space. But, one of the things I keep seeing is Casey Middlestat is being potentially dangled by the Colorado Avalanche, but they need a second line center, and they're trading their second line center to get a second line center. Maybe Middlestat still has enough youth behind them that maybe that's, with a bigger package, maybe Colorado tries to get Lawton. That's a guy I could certainly see being a nice fit for them. I don't think the Devils want to pay a price for that kind of guy at this point, considering what their future has, for the rest of the season. But that's if Toronto could certainly find a way to make it work. Toronto, Colorado, I think would be his two best fits if they could find a way.
Yeah, Casey Middlestat has 2 more years at $5.75 million. No, somebody's going to have to eat some money there, and it's not Colorado because they don't have any of that.
It's inflated, but it's not grossly overinflated for a guy that would on a decent team be a third line center. I mean,
I'm not paying my third line center that much.
Money.
Sure, but nobody should have given him that money. You know what I mean? Like 2 wrongs don't make it right here. I don't want Casey Middlestat. That's what I'm saying. Especially with that deal, I would probably keep Dvorak instead of Middlestat. That's how much I think Middlestat is worth today.
Like I said, I understand Colorado needs a better second line center, but if you got the second line center, you can move Middlestat down to the third line, and maybe he's a little more palatable there. We talked about Armia before. David Savard, what do you think is going to happen with him?
Bag of pucks. His advanced stats are just not good. He is there to play defense. I get that. But at some point, you got to be able to help move the puck up the ice, and he does not do that. When he's on the ice, you're basically short one guy, which is why he plays 5-on-4. If you can convince somebody to give you a pick, I know he wants to stick around, and that's fine. But man, I feel like you got to be able, if you can push a second round pick and get David and get Savard off. I would do it. For Yoel Armia, I guess it's a question of money. Like, if somebody's going to knock your socks off, then fine, do it. If not, I think maybe you can convince him to stay. Same kind of Jake Evans area, kind of same amount of money. That's what he is. He's found. I think he's found his role here in Montreal. He's not a top six guy. He's not, even though he's got skill to be one. He's just not. So I think at this point, it's where what can you get for him? And if you're not, again, you don't need third, fourth round picks. So if that's all you're going to get, keep these guys. They can help you make that push if you want. And if you lose them for nothing, so be it. Right? It is what it is. Or maybe you convince David Savard to take a lot less money in his next contract. But I don't feel the need to shove them out the door. But I'm also not taking a third round pick. So.
All right, let's talk about a guy that you've disliked for most of your life, rooted for him for a couple of weeks here and there in international play, and now you're back to dislike him. But maybe you won't dislike him anymore if he gets moved. Boston's clearly at this point selling. They're not trying to make the playoffs this year. You know, that drop-off that we've talked about for the last year and a half here on Total Hockey Now with the Bruins is finally happening. Season just never got off to a good foot with the whole Jeremy Swayman situation. Here we are. Do we expect Marchand to be moved, or is he staying in Boston? I think it's a great idea to have him out, and people, would love to see where he could go, what he would return. I don't know if it's going to be a hefty price that Boston's going to want, and I don't know if somebody's going to be willing to pay it.
He's not healthy today. His body's not getting any younger. Boston has a lot of pending UFAs. This team will change. I don't think Brad Marchand's the problem. I just don't think he's the player he once was, and that's okay. He's probably going to take less money to come back. I don't feel the need to move Marchand out of Boston. There's a lot of they have a lot of other problems, and Brad Marchand is, I think, the least of my worries. If I was a Bruins fan, I would see why another team would want to acquire him, though, because you love to play with Brad Marchand, and he can bring a lot to the team. He was really good for Canada in that fourth line role. He is still an effective player. He's just not a top line guy who's going to play 20 minutes a night. He's not that anymore, but he is effective. So, like you said, I think the price is just too high. I wouldn't pay for him.
I think for Marchand to be moved, it's going to take like an offer that Don Sweeney gets a phone call, he answers it, and is like, Cam, get over here. You leave what they're offering for. It's going to take a move like that. And now that the cap fell off my
is that a home phone?
That is a landline phone. If you work in broadcast or media, you never underestimate the value of a landline phone. Anyway, we go to Buffalo now. Dylan Cousins, we talked about a deal with the Red Wings falling apart. JJ Peterka, another name Buffalo's throwing out there. It's amazing. You bring in a guy like Lindy Ruff, and they're in the bottom of the East. Who would have thought that was going to happen in Buffalo?
I think we should just relegate the Sabres. Just like, it's already bad enough they have to be in Buffalo, but this team is just they played that home and home with Montreal, and they looked miserable. I don't know what got into Rasmus Dahlin. He thought he was just trying to punch everybody. It's like he turned into Chris Kreider for like 10 minutes, and I was like, "What are you doing, bud?" And then he seems angry, and I would be angry too if I was a Buffalo Sabre, because A, I live in Buffalo, and B, I'm on a terrible hockey team. So this team will be forever rebuilding. They in 20 years, they will still be rebuilding. And Kevin Adams is still going to be asking us what's wrong. And Terry Pagula is going to be saying, I bought this team to turn into a champion. And it's, he'll probably be gone by then, and this team still wouldn't have won anything. So I could not care about the Sabres because nobody wants to go there. And even if they did bring in the best players, it wouldn't change anything. This team is so bad. I don't know what fixes them.
You said that we have a void ever since this team left for the 50% salary retention. Maybe that's Buffalo. Maybe that's going to be their new. Maybe they're going to grow and become that team.
That's probably the only thing they would be good at, and they'd probably do that wrong.
Well, we'll see what happens here with Buffalo with Cousins and Peterka. Like we said, got close to Detroit with Cousins that fell through. Now, we talked about Brock Nelson being arguably the top center available right now. This would be another guy that you'd have to throw into that mix with Ryan O'Reilly. Things not going the way everyone expected in Nashville this year. In terms of places he could go, I know Toronto would be that's a pipe dream. I think if you're Nashville, you have to move him. I don't think you hang on to him. I think you just kind of look at next year and see what you can get. Try and get some sort of silver lining out of this lost season.
I don't know if they can move him. I mean, he still has 2 years left on his deal after this. It's $4.5 million. It's not terrible, but Ryan O'Reilly's a third line center. Let's call him what he is. And that's still a price to pay for him. If I were the Predators, I know this is a lost season and things will change, but they don't have a lot of pending UFAs, and they have their cap space is $2.3 million. Their deadline space is 9.3. It's, you spent all that money less than 12 months ago, so you can do what? Be bad? Like I feel like you're too committed to the money that you spent. You can't just turn the ship around now and be like, well, we're going to rebuild. No, because you brought these guys in to not be that. So, like, how much money do you want to eat to have Ryan O'Reilly go somewhere else? And if you eat money, then you're not getting, you know what I mean? You're not getting a good pick.
Probably stays, but I could see a team that's just like, oh, we got to get a center. Maybe, that's a plan B if Brock Nelson goes. Maybe, Jared was, Moore was talking about how if the Devils are going to make a move for a center, it's got to be somebody with a little bit of term out behind it. Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly's not what he used to be, but maybe that's a target there if they can make something work in terms of having a guy for next year as well and kind of be a Band-Aid at that second line center role just to kind of get through the season. A few more teams to get through in the West here before we go through the Thursday night slate. Chicago expected to sell more. There's Ryan Donato, Connor Murphy, Peter Mrazek. I'd love to see the Lightning get Mrazek. I thought Vanacek was going to go to one of the Florida teams to upgrade their backup situation. Obviously, you're going to live or die with Andrei Vasilevsky, but at least Mrazek over Jonas Johansson, gives you a guy that's been down the road before, has some experience. That would be the one I'd see there. Connor Murphy's a depth addition. Ryan Donato could be a sneaky under the radar ad for somebody.
I think the Blackhawks, as Pat Maroon said, they should extend him. You at some point, Chicago, you got to keep somebody, right? You can't move the whole farm. So he's doing pretty well. I would keep him. Unless, again, your socks get blown off, which you could maybe. But if I'm going to get like a middle round pick for him kind of thing, keep him. They need somebody there. Somebody's got to do something. So at some point, you got to keep some players. And if Ryan Donato is having a good season, I get that you could cash in on that season, but like somebody's got to be in the lineup.
I understand.
Peter Mrazek to Tampa Bay, though, makes sense. Jonas Johansson is terrible.
If Donato was, and 28's not old, but the Blackhawks are very far away right now. I think by the time the Blackhawks start to get competitive, maybe Donato's a little too old. If he was a little bit younger, I would absolutely make that argument of like, you know what? You got to start keeping guys to put around Bedard at some point. Maybe Donato is one of those guys at 28. I don't know. Maybe it's just a tad too old there. But wouldn't surprise me to see Chicago move just about anybody here coming up, whatever they can get. Guys, we talked about Ryan O'Reilly before, his former team, the St. Louis Blues. Braden Shen. Again, this is a center that, could be one of the top 3 or 4 guys out there. Pretty much could fit into any sort of team that's looking to increase depth down the middle. I think St. Louis has to decide here. You're really going to try and go for that last wild card spot, then you got to keep Shen. If you realize that, hey, we could go for that last wild card spot to just lose to a Winnipeg or a Dallas or a Vegas in the first round, flip him like you said with the eye on next year, kind of like the Rangers. You brought in Holloway, you brought in Broberg, you brought in Cam Fowler. You made some moves to try and help for this year. It moved the needle, but maybe not enough. Pavel Buchnevich also playing well. Try and make moves with an eye on making the playoffs next year, I think, is the way to go. So if you can flip Shen, great.
I don't know, man. A lot of money again. 2 more years after this. Oh, sorry. 3 more years after this year at $6.5 million. Oh,
Cap's going up.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we got to be reckless with our money. I mean, he's not getting any younger. And if he is playing, he's a third line center. Do I want to spend that much money on a third line center?
Probably not. But
so he's stuck in St. Louis. Enjoy it.
Maybe
the Midwest.
But maybe that's the argument to hold on to him is like, okay, you can't flip him, but he's still an effective player and can be at second, third line center for the Blues next year. Let's head out to the Pacific Coast. We'll start in the Pacific Northwest and move our way south geographically. Carson Soucy is a name that's been thrown out there a bunch, and Brock Besser is another one. Listen, Vancouver if they were playing better, maybe they're just willing to hold on to these guys and see how far they can go. I think at this point, like, the season's a lost cause. Maybe, we talked about a silver lining there for Nashville. Maybe this is the silver lining in a lost season for the Canucks, is getting a return for these guys with an eye on hopefully getting Elias Pettersson jump-started next year.
I think they can get a decent amount for Carson Soucy. He's one of those defensemen that, solidifies your bottom pairing. A guy who plays defense, he's not going to hurt you. Brock Besser is kind of like, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks, I still need players to score goals, but is there a realistic chance that they re-sign him, considering the absolute cluster bomb that is Vancouver? And if he's looking for like $8 million for 8 years, now we're starting to spend. If you could take that money and do something else with it, I think it would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you need somebody to put the net puck in the net in Vancouver, but it almost feels like they're really trying to turn a page into a new Canucks era here. See them say JT Miller out. Besser would be another step in that direction. Besser can still produce. He's had his injury history, but at this point, if you can get something for him, you got to do it. If you're Vancouver, nothing's happening with the Canucks this year. Let's move to Seattle. Brandon Tanev, he's a fan favorite, but a gritty guy that plays in the middle six or a bottom line on a championship contender. Seattle's already shown that, hey, we're going to send Gord out. We're going to send Bjorkstrand out. They're selling. No reason to not try and get something for Tanev, too.
That has the Toronto Maple Leafs written all over it. Reunite with Chris. Guy who can play in your bottom six. Much, much better than Ryan Reeves. Ryan Reeves is useless. He was put on waivers. Somebody was like, maybe somebody will claim him. And I'm like, sure. Pigs fly. Tanev can be effective. He can play the penalty kill. He can contribute in many different fashions. Again, it's got Toronto written all over it.
Certainly does. 2 more teams to get to here. We move further down the Pacific Coast. San Jose, Mario Ferraro, and Jan Ruda. Jan Ruda expiring at the end of the year. Depth defenseman. And Mario Ferraro still has another year left on his contract, so he should be able to fetch something. I know there's a lot of Sharks fans that don't want to see him go. He's a fan favorite. I understand why. He's a good guy. He's fun around. He's the typical hard-nosed defenseman that probably is missing more teeth than he has. Who doesn't love a guy like that? Hard-nosed brand of hockey, but those guys can actually fetch a pretty decent reward at a deadline, especially with another year of term there. So those 2 guys definitely on the move.
I don't care for Jan Ruda. Mario Ferraro, the asking price is a first plus. Do not call if it's not that. He is 26. He loves to block shots. He's one of those guys who can help you on the right team, can probably help you win a Stanley Cup. That is what he is. You get 1 more year of him being reasonably priced, and he can only make your team better. So if I'm San Jose, it's real simple. I need a first-round pick, and I need a little bit more. First team to give it to me leaves with him. That's it. If not, hold him. Wait. His value's not going to get worse, right? He's still the player he's going to be. And then if he's even next year, if he's a pending UFA for a team that needs it, teams love these kind of guys. They love them. So ask for the moon.
It would be a great fit for Mario Ferraro that could absolutely use him, but have no chance in hell of getting him? Edmonton. That is exactly what the blue line needs, and they've got 0 chance of getting him.
Well, I don't necessarily feel bad for the Edmonton Oilers. They've done very little to address the problems that they had. They did not address the problems they had in the offseason, and there you go.
There you go. Mario Ferraro going to be on the move. We'll see where. I can't, and listen, that's not to say like, oh, he's got like Mike Greer's got to move Ferraro tomorrow, because yes, he's got 1 year left of term, so you'll get a lot more for him tomorrow than you maybe would at next year's trade deadline. But if you don't move him now, you could certainly move him at the draft. You could certainly move him next year at some point with a team trying to get a jump on the deadline. Last team we're going to talk about before we look at the Thursday night slate, Anaheim Ducks. John Gibson was a guy that was supposed to be out there. That's why they went out and got Ville Husso to anticipate him backing up Lucas Dostal. But Gibson hurt again. Don't know if a team's going to make a move for him. It seems like he gets hurt every year right around trade deadline time. Like you said, maybe this is just his way of not wanting to leave Orange County, California. And who would? So I don't know what's happening there. Ryan Strome, another big center wing name out there that should fetch a decent return, that should get moved tomorrow. Don't know if Anaheim's really going to hang on to him. I know last year they tried to make a couple of moves to bring some guys in, but Strome is absolutely a guy that he's fast, he can pass, he can shoot. Anybody looking for an upgrade in the top six, absolutely going to kick the tires there with the Ducks.
I can't trust the Ducks to do anything good. I can't, I just can't.
Like Pat Verbeek?
I just don't think he's not. I don't think he's doing enough. I don't think he's doing enough. He went out. He got Jacob Trouba, and I feel like he had to retain money. That's just, I don't know, man. I can't trust the Ducks.
Well, we'll see what Anaheim does tomorrow. We've done a comprehensive trade deadline preview for tomorrow, and don't forget, Slap Shots tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. The Slap Shot podcast is going to be live all day, with all the breaking news, Sudoku, plenty of guests, Puck Doku, not Sudoku. I wouldn't expect you to turn in for that. That's boring. But we'll do Puck Doku. He's going to have it all covered there. Well, from the opening to the close, he's got it all. Now,
boneless chicken wings on the menu tomorrow afternoon, by the way, for lunch.
So. Okay, you get that. Listen, it's your day. You got to, however you want to do it. It's your day. So here we go. We're going to do a little Thursday picks and preview. We won't go a deep dive here because we're already a little over an hour in. We'll kind of just breeze through the games here. Jets Flyers tonight. These two teams met up a week ago. I'm looking at, at first glance, I wasn't really looking at any action in this game, but the more I look at it, you know what? I'm going to take the Jets to win in regulation. I know Philly beat them 2-1 last week. Winnipeg's on a 3-game skid. They did win 11 in a row before that, so a little market correction there. Philly does have points in 5 of their last 6, but let's be real here. 3 of those victories came against the Penguins and a mightily struggling Edmonton Oilers team. I think the Jets play a little harder in their own end with Eric Comrie getting the start. Money line is too juiced, and I don't want to go as far as the puck line because they still have lost 3 in a row. But Winnipeg's losses haven't come against great teams either, but I do think there's a good bounce back spot here. Give me Winnipeg to win in regulation plus 110.
There you go. I have nothing to add to that. That is exactly it. Everything you said times 2.
Wow. All right. I'm gonna have to isolate that. Bring that back when I need it. Let's go to the Blue Jackets and the Panthers here. I've got no lean on this game, but it should be a good one. Should be fun.
Over. The
Okay.
Jackets defensively not very good on the road. It's not that I don't trust Sergei Bobrovsky. It's just that I think the Panthers can fill the net. So this total opened at 6.5 too, dropped to 6. At worst, you get a push. But I think these teams can combine to score 7 goals.
I actually kind of like that, the overplay there. I know it's Bobrovsky in net, but Columbus doesn't do well. Maybe Florida may get you 5 of those 6 right off the bat. So, like you said, if you get a 5-1 loss, you still get a push. Utah at Detroit. I have no idea why the Utah Hockey Club, besides the fact that they've gotten healthy again, are a minus 135 road favorite at Detroit plus 124. Listen, Utah's had some success lately. They beat Minnesota pretty good. It's an impressive win, but give me a break here. I'm being this heavy of a road favorite. 2 of those wins were 1-goal affairs over Chicago and Vancouver. And yeah, the Red Wings have lost 3 in a row, but they played tough against Carolina the other night. And then it was that Stadium Series home and home with the Blue Jackets before that. So another bounce back spot here, even with Alex Lyon going. Detroit plus 124 with a very winnable game at home. I got to take it.
I was looking at that as well. There's too much love for Utah. That's way too rich on that side. Again, not that I love Alex Lyon, but it's a plus 124. It's screaming my name here.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 picks we see eye to eye on, and I like your over there. So far, we're in lockstep. Let's see if anything changes here. I doubt it. I got the Lightning on the puck line minus a puck and a half plus 106. Lightning's won 9 of 10. That one loss was a 2-1 loss to Florida. Oh no. They're winning high scoring games. They're winning low scoring games. Buffalo's wondering if half of these guys are going to, I know Bowen Byram's name was thrown out there. No, I wouldn't trade Bowen Byram. You got to have some defensemen besides Dahlin and Owen Power. Vasi's going tonight. I'm surprised that they're starting him. I figured tonight would be a good night off, but still barely plus money here with plus 106 on the puck line, but no reason to not think Tampa won't kick the crap out of Buffalo.
Yeah, the money line's too juiced there. The puck line, Sabres aren't winning, so I would be tempted to take the puck line for Tampa Bay and then take the under Like this has the screaming of a
4-1.
4-1, 5-1 game. Like I don't think Tampa Bay comes out and absolutely slaughters them, but no, that's is like no, not for Buffalo tonight. Sorry, boys.
I don't see it happening. Not against the Lightning, at least. We got the Bruins in Carolina taking on the Hurricanes there. Don't really have a play here. I kind of lean under even at 5.5. Kochetkov going tonight against Eunice Korpisalo. So I don't know how much Boston can score. Korpisalo's been a little up and down lately, but I could see this being like I could see this being like a boring 3-1 kind of affair here. So I would lean under, but I'm not going to officially play it.
Could care less about this game.
Well, then there we go. Let's move right along here. Let's talk a little Flames Stars. This has the Tampa Bay Buffalo game, not to the same extent because Buffalo sucks and Calgary's good, but the Stars are one of the strongest teams in the conference. They've won 3 in a row, 6 of their last 7. And yeah, I know Calgary's been playing better. They, beat the Capitals the other night. They gave the Lightning and the Panthers a couple of tough games there. But it's Ottinger versus Vladar tonight. He's another guy. I think they're showcasing him. That hopefully he has a decent start. Maybe somebody takes a flyer on him as a backup, but I think Dallas can cover this in a low-scoring affair. I could see this being like another one, like a 4-1 kind of game here for Dallas.
Yeah, Dan Vladar is pretty bad at stopping pucks, so Stars puck line. That's Dan Vladar is not very good.
Stars puck line plus 105 there, minus $1.50 there. That's maybe you parlay that with the Lightning to get a little bit better plus money there. Certainly not a bad way. Kraken and Predators, I've got nothing here. These are two teams that are selling. They've gotten. I have no desire to touch this game because this game could be 2-1 or 7-5.
7-5. Who's scoring all those goals?
I don't know.
Certainly not the Predators. I am with you here. This is not great, but if I was an absolute degenerate, which I am, it would be the Kraken money line. I mean, the Predators are just a joke. A joke. Like I get the Kraken are selling, but the Predators they have one of the worst offenses in the league. And that was after all the players that would have to go get. And it's been rough for Joey Decord over his last couple of starts. What an excellent time to just get better against the lonely Predators.
You know what? I'm going to, they got Michael Bunting. They're going to get that injection into the lineup tonight. I know that they don't score a ton of goals, but they just put up 6 on Boston. They put up 4 against the Islanders a few games before that. I don't know. I've got no lean here. I might actually, I'm not touching this one. Let's hear what you got to think about Canadiens Oilers. Canadian, the total 6.5. I lean under 6.5 minus 108. Not sure if I'm going to play this one yet. But you tell me here. Well, how we're going to read this one.
Montreal plus 1.5. The Habs have been playing a lot better of late. The Oilers stink. They stink. I know the last time they played Montreal, they played at the Bell Center. The Oilers didn't score a single goal. I'm not expecting the same thing to happen tonight because I get it's tough to play on the road. But the Oilers are not scoring goals as they should. Matthias Ekholm is out of the lineup. For some reason, I guess they don't know. Jeff Skinner loved to torment the Montreal Canadiens when he was in Buffalo and Carolina. He's not playing tonight. So, okay. I feel like it's kind of like for baseball and they're like batter versus pitcher. Like, I guess it's like players versus certain teams. They just like Jeff Skinner, you can sit. Stuart Skinner is starting. He's also not good. So I think it's rich to hope the Montreal Canadiens win. Like maybe that's where I sprinkle, but I think they can cover the puck line.
And this is one of those rare times where a plus 1.5 has actually got some decent. It's at minus 124. So this is one of those rare instances that a team getting a puck and a half might actually win you some money there. I love that play. I think that's a strong one to go there. I didn't know. In fact, once we get off, I'm going to make sure I get that one in because I really like that one. And I do like the under here. I think you're going to get a little bit more of a tighter game. See how that goes. One last game to get to on the docket. The Colorado Avalanche, who have won 11 in a row over the San Jose Sharks. I've got nothing on this because everything's too juiced. The regulation went too much. Money line too much. Puck line was, I think, even at like minus 160. So no action on this game whatsoever. And if you wanted to go to the alternate puck line at minus 2.5, I looked this up before, plus 105 for 2.5. So there's no play here.
Damn. Yeah, that's The Mackenzie Blackwood, Alexander Georgiev revenge tour tonight. I don't trust Georgiev enough to care.
I don't trust this.
I thought maybe the Sharks puck line could hold, but not with Georgiev in net.
No, not with Georgiev and net. And listen, I know they may be feeling good. They're coming off that 6-2 win over the Sabres the other night. They beat Toronto the night before that.
Everybody beats the Sabres.
Everybody beats the Sabres, and they every once in a while a bad team beats a good team, like San Jose beats Toronto. I don't think that's happening tonight here. I don't see anybody on San Jose really getting to Colorado here. If there's if you want to play the total, I want to look at that. I don't even have it up on the screen anymore. What's the total?
I don't think it's enough.
Like the total, if you think it's going to go over 6 is -120. If you think it's going to be a low scoring affair, under 6 is +100. If you got to lean one of those two ways, that's probably the only thing to play in this game.
It's just like I said, I was thinking maybe like the puck line, because you can get a +130. You're telling me this team is going to lose? They only have to lose by 1 goal. You get plus money. But then I remembered it's San Jose, and I'm like, Colorado is so dominant on home ice. I can't do it. Can't pull the trigger. There's nothing here I enjoy.
And sometimes what you get when you get a team like when they play a team like Buffalo, and then you go to playing at a mile high elevation against one of the better teams in the conference. If you want to lay 2.5 to get +105. If you want to lay 3.5, what's laying 3.5? If we really think there's going to be a blowout tonight here, what would be laying 3.5 in that game? Come on.
I'm worried that Georgiev gets lit up early. He comes out. Whoever is backing up comes in, and then like the Sharks, like then they have nothing to lose. So they just go all out, and Colorado's like, well, we've done it. And then like they kind of like crawl back in there.
Very
That's
possible.
kind of what I'm worried about. Like I don't think it's a 6-7-0 win. You know what I mean?
All right, so if you wanted to cover 3.5 plus 235.
Okay. There's a significant gap there. So even Vegas doesn't think it's possible. They think it'll be a beating, but not a bad one.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, I'll have that game on just to go to sleep. But nonetheless, yeah. And just one other quick thing before we get out of here. Alexander Ovechkin, the Ovometer currently sits at 885. They host Detroit on a back-to-back tomorrow night. So maybe I guess Cam Talbot's going to go there if Lions going tonight. So we'll see what the Capitals do. That has me thinking maybe over in that game. We'll see. But yeah, Ovechkin, 10 away from history. And I'll be at the SAP Center in 9 days. So I don't think I'm going to see history. I'd love to see something post 890, though. I think I can get that.
I think that's not asking too much. Not from Ovi. He can do it. If anybody can score multiple goals in a game, it's Ovi.
All right. We'll close with that. Let's figure out what my realistic chances are to see what goal number I'm going to see on Saturday. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 games before I get there. So I think
he's got to score what? 5 goals in 4 games?
I think I could, even if I got to 890. So I think if he scores 4 goals before the game, I'll be happy with 890 or beyond.
Yeah, that's again, this is the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. I don't think that's an impossible task for him.
Now, one thing I was going to try and do, but it's not going to happen because I'm going to have my daughter with me and it's just going to be me and her. Sometimes I like to get those practice pucks that have the logos from before, from warmups. They're $40 now, which I'm out on them. $40. But if Ovechkin had a chance at history, you better believe I'm buying that $40 puck and holding on to it and hoping he has history and then flipping that on eBay for whatever it's worth. But
that's like $280 Canadian plus the tariff. That's wild.
Yeah, I didn't think about the tariff, so we'll see how some people understand how tariffs work, some don't. Marek Doucet checking in. Can't wait for your podcast tomorrow, Chris. Neither can I. We have basically done everything we can to get you ready for tomorrow's trade deadline. Not to say that no more moves are going to happen tonight, but if nothing's happened by 6:30 Eastern time, I doubt we're going to get any late night trades. So market is getting ready there tomorrow. San Jose without Sturm and Kunin. Some kids probably getting more ice time. Absolutely. And that's part of, that's what happens post trade deadline. If you're a team like San Jose or Chicago, is unless, again, Barracuda playing well, maybe they don't want to upset that apple cart too much. This is a chance to call those guys up that you want to give a little NHL experience to, give them a little taste. Askarov, my way of handling Askarov the rest of the way, got a back-to-back where maybe you could get him to play something where it's not going to come at the expense of the Barracuda, you do it. Otherwise, just leave him down there for the rest of the year. And next year, he's your guy. So looking forward to Slapshot. So one more time, throw out what we're doing tomorrow, what you're doing tomorrow on Slapshot.
10 a.m. Eastern. We got a full show until 5 p.m. Eastern. We have guests lined up. We're going to talk a ton of hockey. We can hang out all day, and then we can just whatever life throws at us. We can debate where Mikko Rantanen is going to go all day if you want. But we got a ton of fun coming up. Puck Doku, guests, NHL DFS, NHL Bass Bats, just a never-ending fun. So youtube.com/@slapshot podcast. Hit the sub button, ring the bell, tune in, bring your lunch. Most so blessed.
Absolutely. I'll be joining that as well. Looking forward to the full day of coverage. And hopefully Chris still has a voice come Friday night, Saturday morning. Rip and Riff, we earlier in the week did our usual pack ripping. Upcoming on Monday, it's going to be all hockey as we recap the trade deadline. So, by the time Total Hockey Now comes next week, it's going to be a little too late to really recap the deadline. You're looking for, some more recap coverage after Slapshots gets off the air tomorrow. Tune in to Rip and Riff Monday. Going to be ripping some Upper Deck Series 1, 2024, 25 out of a tin that I've been patiently waiting to open since Christmas. We're going to rip that bad boy open on Monday. But that'll do it for this edition Total Hockey Now here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube channel. Both of us will be back with you tomorrow. Check out the Slapshot podcast on YouTube. Another week, come back for Total Hockey Now. But for @FuzzyChris91, I am @PuckingThoughts Adam Bernard. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Faulty Synapse. Thank you, Samuel Attias. Thank you, State of Survival. Thank you, Marek. Appreciate everybody here. Back with you next week with an all-new episode of Total Hockey Now here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube channel.